find a place where you're going to dig and get your dirt ready so that when everything's up and running, you can start putting it through the plant.
So this is like a map with the drill results.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Parker Schnabel just found an abandoned trommel stuffed with gold, $400 million worth. That's not just a lucky break, it's a discovery that could rewrite mining history. Could this be the biggest lost treasure ever uncovered in the Yukon? Tune in, because what he does next is so shocking, it made the whole Discovery crew burst into tears of joy. The forgotten fortune beneath the Yukon. This all started when Parker got word from a neighbor looking to sell his property. The land, an untouched stretch of gold-rich ground with a hidden surprise beneath the surface. It wasn't just about the dirt, Parker was buying out an entire operation. The price? $25 million. A bold move even for him. The debt? Massive. The potential even bigger. But could he actually pull it off? Before we dive into this, one thing is certain. What Parker uncovered is far more astonishing than anyone expected. And this is just the beginning of the shock. His operation was already stretched thin, and adding another site into the mix wasn't going to make things easier. The crew barely had enough hands to keep things moving as it was. Still, with gold prices soaring and his current mines nearing depletion, the timing was crucial. His team had to move fast, but none of them expected what they would uncover in the process. After signing the deal, he wasted no time. His crew rolled into the new claim, preparing to strip the ground and get the operation running. That's when they found it, a massive trommel forgotten in the depths of the Yukon, rusted, covered in dirt, and seemingly abandoned for years. But the moment they pried it open, they knew they had struck gold. Literally, inside the trommel, a jaw-dropping fortune in untouched pay dirt ready to be processed. How had this been left behind? Had the previous owners overlooked it? Or had they simply run out of time, leaving behind a fortune that nobody knew existed? Either way, he wasn't about to waste another second. The crew rushed to get the trommel up and running. But of course, nothing comes easy in the gold mining world. The machine was falling apart, parts were missing, and years of neglect had taken their toll. Fixing it wasn't just an option, it was a necessity. Without it, they couldn't touch the gold hidden inside. The success of this find depended entirely on their ability to get it working again. Every moment counted. Mechanics worked around the clock, welding, reinforcing, and hoping the machine could be salvaged. The risks were huge. If it didn't hold up, all that gold could slip right through their fingers. But if they pulled it off, it would be the single biggest find of his career. Finally, after days of grueling work, it was time to fire it up. The old trommel groaned back to life, gears grinding, dirt tumbling, and gold starting to separate from the earth. What poured out was beyond belief. Pile after pile of rich, untouched pay dirt that had been sitting there forgotten for who knows how long. The first cleanout confirmed it. This was no ordinary find. The yield was staggering, far surpassing anything he had pulled in recent seasons. Just 2 days of running, the trommel had already produced 140 ounces of gold, nearly double the amount from his other sites combined. If they kept this up, they could recover millions within weeks. But this win came with pressure. Now that he knew what was hiding in that trommel, he had to make sure nothing stopped production. Equipment failure, bad weather, anything could derail the operation. His team had to keep the machine running at all costs. The stakes had never been higher. There was also the looming question, why had the previous owners abandoned something this valuable? Did they not realize what they had? Or had they run into problems that forced them to leave it behind? Either way, he was in possession of something that could turn into one of the biggest gold hauls in history if he played his cards right. As the weeks went on, the numbers kept climbing. By the end of the first week, the haul had reached over 500 ounces. The value? Over $1 million. And that was just the beginning. The more they ran the trommel, the more they uncovered. It was as if an entire mountain of gold had been waiting all these years, just buried under the surface, hidden in plain sight. With results like these, he knew this wasn't just a good investment. It was the defining moment of his career. The kind of find that happens once in a lifetime. The kind that changes everything. But as any seasoned miner knows, luck can turn fast. If they hit a problem they couldn't fix, if the trommel broke down beyond repair, or if unexpected costs ate into their profits, this dream could turn into a disaster just as quickly as it had started. Would they be able to keep this operation running? Could they extract every ounce of gold before something went wrong? He had bet big on this claim, and so far it was paying off. But the Yukon is unpredictable, and the biggest finds often come with the biggest challenges. Parker had risked everything on this claim, but mining wasn't just about luck, it was about learning, working hard, and making smart choices. The boy who took over a mine. Parker Schnabel didn't exactly have the typical childhood most kids dream of. Born in late July of the early 90s, he was raised in Haines, Alaska, where gold mining wasn't just a job, it was the family way. His grandfather, the well-known John Schnabel, ran the Big Nugget mine, so naturally he was handed a shovel before most kids even learned how to ride a bike. The kid practically grew up in a world of dirt, machines, and the promise of striking it rich. By the time he was barely old enough to read a book, he was already out there getting his hands dirty at the Big Nugget mine. Unlike most kids who spent their summers playing video games or going to summer camps, he was hauling rocks and learning how to operate heavy machinery. His grandfather wasn't about to let him take the easy route either. He had to put in real work. It wasn't long before he was running equipment that grown men were still struggling to handle. This wasn't some weekend hobby, this was a full-on education in gold mining, and he was getting a crash course before he even hit grade school. Even when school was in the picture, his mind was still on mining. He played basketball and got good grades, but let's be real, the real action was always back at the mine. While other kids were stressing about college applications, he had his eyes on something bigger. A desk job wasn't in the cards for him. Instead of taking the safe route and heading off to college, he did something that most people would call reckless. He put all his savings into his own mining operation. Forget the textbooks, he was learning the hard way by risking everything on a dream. Then came the big test. At just 16, while most teens were trying to survive high school drama, he was handed the keys to the Big Nugget mine. His grandfather was stepping back, and suddenly he wasn't just some kid learning the ropes, he was the boss. Imagine being a teenager and trying to lead a crew of miners, many of them old enough to be your father. That's exactly what he did. And somehow, he didn't just keep things running, he made them better. Gold was coming out of the ground, and he was proving that he wasn't just playing around. That kind of drive doesn't go unnoticed. By the time 2010 rolled around, Discovery Channel came knocking, and just like that, he became one of the faces of Gold Rush. Viewers got a front row seat to his path, from making rookie mistakes to becoming one of the most successful miners on the show. And while reality TV is full of scripted nonsense, his grind was real. He wasn't just there to play a character, he was out there doing the work, making the hard calls, and showing what it really takes to pull gold from the ground. Of course, he didn't just sit back and enjoy the fame. Instead of cashing in and taking it easy, he did what any smart businessman would do. He reinvested. Bigger equipment, better operations, and riskier digs. He wasn't afraid to go beyond what was comfortable, and that meant heading to new locations, taking on bigger projects, and putting everything on the line. It wasn't always smooth sailing, mining never is, but he had one advantage. He refused to back down. Failure wasn't an option, and when things went sideways, he found a way to turn them around. But he wasn't satisfied with just doing things the traditional way. He wanted more. Bigger challenges, new territories, and a chance to see what the world had to offer beyond the same old Alaskan dirt. That led to spin-offs like Gold Rush, Parker's Trail, where he took on extreme mining adventures in places most people wouldn't even think of going. It wasn't just about mining anymore. It was about pushing limits, testing himself, and seeing just how far he could take his passion. Despite the success, he never let himself get too comfortable. He never forgot where he came from or the lessons his grandfather taught him. Hard work, smart choices, and never being afraid to take a risk. That's what kept him moving forward. A lot of people would have cracked under the pressure, but he thrived in it. The kid who once had to stand on his toes to reach the pedals of a mining truck had turned into one of the most respected miners in the industry. Now, the big question is, what's next? He has already done what most people never will, built a legacy before hitting middle age. But knowing him, he's not about to slow down. The world of gold mining is unpredictable, full of highs and lows, and it takes a certain kind of person to stick with it. He isn't just in it for the gold, he's in it because it's in his blood. And if history has taught us anything, it's that he isn't done making his mark just yet. Loving mining was one thing, but proving he could compete with experienced miners was another. And that's exactly what happened when he joined Gold Rush. The biggest Gold Rush gambles. Gold Rush isn't just a show about digging dirt, it's a battlefield where miners throw everything they have at the earth, hoping it throws back gold. Some have struck it rich, while others have barely walked away with dust. From the beginning, this series has been packed with wild successes, brutal failures, and enough bad decisions to make anyone question how some of these guys even got this far. Back in the first season, Todd Hoffman and his crew showed up in Alaska thinking gold mining was easy money. Turns out they had no idea what they were doing. Machines broke down, mistakes piled up, and in the end, they barely walked away with 14 ounces of gold. Not exactly the fortune they dreamed of, but at least it was something. Then came Parker Schnabel in Season 2, taking over his grandfather's mine. A kid with more ambition than experience, but somehow he still managed to do better than the Hoffmans. Meanwhile, a miner called Dakota Fred took over the Hoffmans' old claim and proved that experience actually matters in this business. Season 3 was a turning point, the moment when everything changed for the miners. The Hoffman crew decided to take a bigger risk, expanding their mining efforts in hopes of finally striking it big. This time, their gamble actually worked. After years of failures, they managed to pull in more than 800 ounces of gold, a huge jump compared to their past seasons. One young miner also took things more seriously, proving he wasn't just another rookie, but someone ready to compete with the best. Meanwhile, Dakota Fred kept his focus, working as hard as ever, determined to carve out his own success. But then Season 4 arrived, and that was when everything truly shifted. A bold decision was made to move the operation to Scribner Creek, a choice that would change a career forever. Unlike the Hoffmans, who were making wild decisions, he was focused on the future. He invested in better equipment, hired more skilled workers, and it all paid off in a massive way. By the end of the season, he had mined more than 1,000 ounces of gold, proving he was no longer just another miner. He was a force to be reckoned with. When Season 5 rolled around, he was in a league of his own. He had already proven he could mine over 1,000 ounces, but this time he set his sights even higher. By the time the season ended, his gold count had more than doubled, making it clear that he was on a path to something much bigger. Meanwhile, the Hoffmans finally got back to mining where they belonged, but even with their renewed focus, they couldn't come close to his success. This was also the season that introduced Tony Beets in a big way. A veteran miner with decades of experience, Tony had his own way of doing things, and he wasn't afraid to take risks. Instead of using modern mining methods, he decided to revive an old dredge, an enormous piece of equipment from the past. Many thought it was a waste of time, but Tony believed that if he could make it work, he would have an advantage no one else did. Over the next few seasons, the competition grew fiercer, with numbers climbing higher and higher. First 3,000 ounces, then 4,000, and by Season 8 he had done the impossible, mining more than 6,000 ounces of gold. Finding gold wasn't easy, and with bigger risks every season, only the toughest miners could stay on top. Breaking records, chasing more. Season 9 brought new challenges, but one big question loomed over everything. Could the incredible streak keep going? The answer? Absolutely. That season, yet another record was broken with more than 7,000 ounces of gold mined. While that success continued, Rick Ness decided it was time to step out of the shadow. After years of working as a right-hand man, Rick finally struck out on his own. His goal was clear: mine at least 1,000 ounces and prove he could be a leader. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when it looked like he wouldn't make it, but by the end of the season, he barely managed to pull it off. Meanwhile, Tony Beets continued to grind away, staying true to his old-school methods. He had his own goals, but that season things didn't quite go as planned, and he fell short of his target. Even so, Tony wasn't the type to back down. By the time Season 10 rolled around, the money was getting serious. Even though the amount of gold mined was slightly lower than before, rising gold prices meant the haul was worth more than ever. Meanwhile, Rick Ness had a tough season, barely pulling in a few hundred ounces, just enough to keep going. Tony Beets took a huge risk. He moved his entire mining operation to a new location. It was a bold move, but in the long run, it turned out to be one of his smartest decisions. Then came season 11 and expectations were shattered again. More than 7,000 ounces of gold were pulled from the ground, the biggest amount yet. Even Tony found a rich section of land, proving that there was still plenty of gold left for those who were willing to dig deeper than before. When season 12 arrived, an incredible milestone was reached, more than 8,000 ounces of gold, the most ever mined. Tony wasn't far behind, bringing in a solid haul of his own. Rick Ness finally caught a break, pulling in better numbers after struggling for so long. But this season also introduced a new player, Fred Lewis, who tried his hand at mining for the first time. His start was rough and he barely managed to get by, showing just how hard it was to make it in this business. Then came season 13, and not much changed at the top. The competition remained fierce, with massive numbers still rolling in, steady work being done, and new miners entering the race, all hoping to strike it rich. But only a few had the skills and luck needed to make it in the harsh world of gold mining. By the time season 14 arrived, the pressure had never been higher. Tony was pushing harder than ever, and new miners were stepping up, all fighting for the best land. Old faces returned, determined to prove they still had what it took to succeed in the mining business. Some walked away with life-changing amounts of gold, while others walked away with nothing at all. But one thing was clear: a true empire had been built. From a young teenager just trying to learn the ropes to becoming one of the strongest forces in the industry, one miner had outlasted nearly everyone who tried to compete. Even with all the ups and downs, there was no backing down, and now that hard work had led to standing at the very top of the gold mining world. Gold Rush isn't just about gold, it's about survival, strategy, and knowing when to take risks. Some miners played smart and got rich. Others gambled everything and lost. The dirt doesn't lie. If you don't know what you're doing, it'll eat you alive. And as the seasons go on, one question remains. How long can this incredible streak last before someone finally knocks the top miner off his throne? Could a forgotten trommel packed with $400 million in gold really go unnoticed for so long? Or is there something bigger at play? Maybe a cover-up or even a hidden claim someone didn't want Parker to find? What do you think? Was this gold truly lost, or was someone keeping it hidden? Tell us your thoughts and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.